Jeffrey Epstein was a financier. He became widely known for wealth and influential connections. He owned homes in New York, he owned homes in Florida, he owned homes in New Mexico, and a private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. He flew on private jets. He donated to charities and schools. He mixed with many public figures. This case matters because many young women said they were harmed. The law handled him in ways that raised questions. The story affects many areas of public life and law. It touches on criminal investigations, prosecutorial choices, prison oversight, and civil justice. It also raises concerns about the power of wealthy people to shape outcomes. Most of all, it centers on victims and survivors who sought recognition and justice. This essay follows the known facts in order. It uses public records and reporting. It starts with the earliest known crimes and moves step by step. The writing uses short sentences for clarity. It keeps a calm and factual tone. It does not speculate. It respects victims and reports only what reliable sources have shown. The sources used include court documents, indictments, and reporting from major news outlets. Where dates, places, or people appear, they come from public records or widely reported material. And this essay explains the 2008 plea deal and the 2019 arrest and death in jail. It also notes major civil suits and settlements after Epstein's death. We proceed fact first, step by step. Jeffrey Epstein was born in 1953 in Brooklyn, New York. He attended local schools and then college. He worked briefly as a teacher, math and physics, at the Dalton School in Manhattan in the mid-1970s. He later moved into finance and became known as a private money manager for wealthy clients. By the 1980s, Epstein had built a small financial firm. He cultivated clients and associates. He developed connections to high-profile people in finance, politics, and academia. He donated money to some institutions and created a public persona as a philanthropist. Epstein bought multiple properties over time: a Manhattan mansion, a Palm Beach home, and a private island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. He traveled on a private plane that appears in later flight logs and court records. He employed staff who managed properties and travel arrangements. Some staff later were named in legal documents. These homes and travel patterns feature heavily in investigations and civil suits. His wealth and connections gave him power in social and public circles. That power is part of why reporters and prosecutors reviewed his activities closely after allegations emerged. Understanding his early career helps explain his networks and why the case involved complex legal and institutional responses. The first major public allegations that led to a police investigation began in 2005 in Palm Beach, Florida. A woman reported to Palm Beach police that her 14-year-old daughter was paid by Epstein for sexual acts. That complaint prompted detectives to interview other young women and families in Palm Beach County. Detectives gathered sworn statements and developed a list of possible victims. Their work pointed to patterns of recruitment and payment to young girls at Epstein's Palm Beach home. Investigators identified a number of young women who described similar experiences. They described being paid and being directed to undress or perform sexual acts. the Broward County State Attorney's Office, and then U.S. Attorneys' offices reviewed the case as it developed. Prosecutors pursued criminal charges and search warrants. The investigation included interviews with Epstein staff and visitors to the property. The 2005 to 2006 investigation set the stage for future legal actions. It produced sworn statements and leads that later informed civil suits and news reporting. The nature of the allegations, often involving minors, made the case urgent. It raised questions about how charges would proceed in state and federal systems. Those early files would echo for years. In 2008, Epstein reached a plea deal with Florida prosecutors that became widely controversial. Under the agreement, he pleaded guilty to 2 state charges, 1 count of solicitation of prostitution and 1 count of procurement of a minor for prostitution. He was sentenced in state court and served about 13 months in the Palm Beach County Jail under a work release arrangement. A central feature was a non-prosecution agreement negotiated by federal prosecutors. That agreement protected Epstein from federal prosecution for conduct described in the Florida investigation. It included confidentiality terms that blocked prosecutors from informing many identified victims about the deal's details until much later. The terms and process drew criticism from victims and outside lawyers. Victims later claimed they were neither fully consulted nor properly informed. Federal and state legal reviews questioned whether the deal met legal standards and victims' rights provisions at the time. The outcome left many charges not pursued at the federal level and limited public knowledge of evidence. For years after, lawyers and journalists revisited the deal, calling for public records and re-examination of decisions. Scrutiny resumed in the late 2010s after renewed reporting and legal filings. Momentum built toward a new federal case. For years after the plea, journalists and lawyers sought more records. Some materials remained sealed. Victims and their attorneys complained the earlier deal shielded evidence and names of others. Reporting probed Epstein's contacts, finances, and travel using court filings and leaked documents. A major turning point came in 2018 when the Miami Herald published a multi-part investigative series. Reporters, including Julie K. Brown, detailed the Palm Beach investigation, the plea agreement, and many victims' experiences. The series cited interviews, sworn statements, and court papers arguing the case deserved renewed attention. Public outcry followed, and legal responses grew. There were calls for a Department of Justice review, new civil lawsuits, and intensified congressional and media attention. The reporting showed how records and interviews can reopen long-closed cases and push legal systems to act. Key dates, names, and documents once private or overlooked came into view. The public pressure helped lead to renewed federal action in 2019. In July 2019, federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York filed new charges against Epstein. The indictment accused him of sex trafficking and conspiracy to engage in sex trafficking of minors. Prosecutors alleged a scheme in which Epstein recruited young women and paid them to have sex with him and with others. He was arrested on July 6, 2019, after landing at Teterboro Airport and was taken into federal custody. He was arraigned in Manhattan federal court and pleaded not guilty. The indictment described conduct across multiple locations, named certain associates, and identified involved properties. Given the seriousness of the alleged offenses and flight risk, prosecutors sought detention without bail. Defense argued for release with high security arrangements. The federal case moved forward while civil suits were also active. The arrest renewed public interest and legal scrutiny. It set in motion incarceration and events that followed in August 2019. The indictment became a key public document laying out allegations prosecutors intended to prove. Trial preparation would not reach a jury. After arrest, Epstein was held at the Metropolitan Correctional Center in New York City. On August 10th, 2019, he was found unresponsive in his cell and later pronounced dead at a hospital. The medical examiner ruled the death a suicide by hanging. His death prompted multiple investigations into MCC conditions. Reports found staffing shortages, failures in monitoring, and issues with camera footage and procedures. 2 correctional officers were later charged with falsifying records about checks on Epstein. Those officers later pleaded guilty to official misconduct. The death prevented the federal criminal case from proceeding to trial. It fueled many civil actions and public questions. Investigations examined whether jail practices contributed to the outcome and prompted reform discussions. Victims called for answers and continued civil litigation. Some criminal accountability became impossible once the accused could no longer stand trial. Civil cases and estate litigation moved forward to seek redress and documentation. After Epstein's death, many victims filed civil suits against his estate and associated entities. Victims sought compensation and records that could show the full scope of the alleged trafficking. The estate agreed to settlements with groups of survivors totaling hundreds of millions of dollars. These settlements often included confidentiality terms and releases against future claims. Some victims accepted settlements, others pursued separate actions. Civil filings produced new public documents, flight logs, visitor records, and transaction records. Some lawsuits targeted other individuals or institutions alleged to have enabled conduct. Not all claims resulted in liability. Courts examined each claim on its facts and evidence. Civil discovery remains a major source of information about contacts and locations. Litigation sought to unseal records for academic and journalistic review and to make more documents public. The suits provided avenues for compensation and for some to tell their stories. Civil cases do not carry the criminal standard of proof, and settlements are not admissions by those who settle. Many survivors of Epstein's alleged abuse have spoken publicly, filed lawsuits, sought counseling, and sought support. They described recruitment when they were young, promises of money or benefit, and coercion or pressure to comply. Their accounts have driven public attention, investigative reporting, and legal claims in criminal and civil courts. Advocates and lawyers pushed for changes to law and policy on sex trafficking and victim notification. They urged prosecutors and courts to protect victims' rights and allow victims to be heard. Support groups, advocacy organizations, and legal clinics offered services to help survivors navigate cases and healing. Courts have balanced victims' privacy with public interest in transparency. Some records were sealed for years. Where possible, survivor testimony and sworn statements became part of civil filings and news reporting. Survivors' contributions were central to renewed legal action and public debate about prosecutorial decisions. Respect for survivors remains essential. What is known includes the 2005 Palm Beach investigation, the 2008 plea deal, the 2019 federal indictment, and Epstein's death in custody. Public records and investigative reporting have documented alleged schemes of recruitment and payment to underage girls. Civil litigation produced settlements and released many documents, including flight logs and visitor records. Unresolved questions remain about who else may have been involved in alleged crimes and about decisions made in 2008. Some details remain sealed. Some suits are ongoing. Courts continue to decide what can be released, the reasons for certain decisions, and the full list of relevant evidence may take time and rulings to be clear. The case highlights issues about victims' rights, prosecutorial transparency, and jail oversight. It shows how investigative reporting and public records push cases back into view. Most importantly, it centers the victims and survivors who continue to seek answers and justice. The work of journalists, lawyers, courts, and advocates continues. New records and rulings may further illuminate events. Until then, the public record offers a timeline of investigations, a controversial plea, renewed federal charges, and a death that ended criminal proceedings. The path forward emphasizes respect for survivors, careful review of facts, and continued legal processes.